Okay, welcome back to the Modern Revolution. Thank you for joining us again. As you know, when we have our guests, we don't spend a lot of time explaining to you why you should listen to them. We encourage you instead just to listen. And then as we go along, we'll tell you where you can learn more about them. And today, my good fortune continues. I have a wonderful guest, Lynne Bowman. Lynne, thank you for joining us.
Well, you already know this. I'm tickled to be with you. What fun. We love this.
That's very generous. We were having a great conversation before we invited all of you podcast listeners into the conversation. So you're joining us a little bit in flight. And so Lynne, we like to start the conversation here in public, at least, with the question, what problem in the world are you working on solving?
Chronic disease.
Okay. So you picked a small one.
Because something like 85% of us are suffering and dying from diseases that are preventable, reversible,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Don't require medication if you just do what I tell you.
Okay.
And chronic disease causes, I think a lot of people don't stop to think about how much damage chronic disease does financially, emotionally.
Yes.
I mean, it destroys families. It
Right.
destroys families' wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And in my life, it began with my mom dying when I was 18
Oh my goodness.
of a chronic disease, which she couldn't have helped. But as I matured and things happened in my life, I began to see that other people don't have to go through that. If you would just listen to me,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to suffer that way. People don't have to suffer from so many of the chronic diseases that we are suffering from.
So let's just name a few of them, like in terms of maybe the ones in which you spend the most time focusing on. Then I'd like for you to talk to me a little bit about, my wife's a naturopathic physician, so the naturopathic perspective informs a lot of my perspectives in terms of health, and maybe you can talk a little bit about root causes, but just to kind of like for folks that might not have the vocabulary to go, well, when I talk about a chronic disease, these are them. So could you tell us a few?
Really easy. Diabetes, that's
Mm-hmm.
mine.
Right.
I'm a former diabetic, a current diabetic if I don't behave myself, but
Right.
diabetes, heart disease,
Mm-hmm.
arterial
Is
arterial sclerosis and those
right.
things. And
Those are the big ones in a lot of ways, where and diabetes costs the country $388 billion a year, right? Like I always feel like, oh, if you gave that as a farm subsidy, you could, you could probably cure 95% of them. When we talk about chronic disease and the ability to handle it outside of the conventional manner in which we handle it now, what are some, if I can use that term, root causes? Like what are some of the things that create this condition?
one of the reasons you and I are talking is because you've covered a lot of this on kind of different angles
Mm-hmm.
on the show with past guests, all talking about interesting gut health and things like this.
Right.
I'm a grandma, and I'm here not as a physician. I am here as a grandma.
Okay.
And what I want to tell you is to stop eating crap. That's my message.
Right. Yeah. How many
That's
things
it.
get better if we just stop eating crap?
Just stop eating crap and drinking crap.
Right.
That's it. And so you can all go, well, yeah, well, what do you mean? You know what I mean. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
That's
Uh,
right. Well,
yeah.
Michael Pollan talks about that, right? Like Michael Pollan says, if you put it in front of you and your great grandmother would say, what is that? Then that
Yeah.
is not food. That's a construction of food, but that is not actually food.
Michael Pollan's been a great inspiration. I love the way he writes and the way he
Mm-hmm.
approaches this. But again, I'm a grandma, so I have a slightly different point of view. We
Right.
share a lot. And of course, one of them is, okay, read the label.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the grocery store with your kids. And I single mom of 3.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
so I have logged an enormous number of hours in grocery stores,
Right.
some of them very late at night, I'm going to say too. And y'all who've been single parents, you know what I mean.
Right.
10 o'clock at night in the discount canned goods store.
Right.
That's where we went. But the kids all knew that they could not have it if they didn't read the label out loud to me and understand what was in it. You
Right.
can't pronounce it, put it back.
Right.
You
Right.
know, you don't know what it is, put it back. And it's always been a big part of how we approach food in my home.
Right.
It's so easy. Just read the label. You know, happily, we have laws that force people to
That's right.
put stuff on the label. Now, there's some cheaty weasel ways that they can do it. For example, there are a million different ways that you can say sugar,
Right.
you know, dextrose this and polysaccharide that and so on.
Right.
So you don't always know just how much sugar. But there again, if you can't pronounce it, don't know what it is, it's probably sugar.
Right.
So ixnay, you know, just no. That's easy. That's not hard, is it?
So you're for you. So the direct line we're talking about, right, is that there's chronic disease out in the world, and it's wreaking havoc in a variety of ways, and
Yep.
that it's not something we should accept as a fact of life. There are things we can do about it. And the
Yeah.
grandmotherly advice, straightforward as it is to stop eating crap. And how
Yeah.
do you know if it's crap? Well, if you can't pronounce it, you don't know what it is, you should be suspicious of it. So is that a fair paraphrase of what we just kind of went
That's a
over?
huge part of it,
Okay.
Peter.
Yeah,
And
tell us more.
here's another little fun fact. 60% of the calories consumed in this country are soda pop.
Yes. Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Anybody?
Well,
That's nuts.
it's a fascinating progression because if we go to the advertisements of the 1950s and they have a lady holding up a bottle of Coca-Cola that's 16 ounces and the caption reads, "It serves three." All right, so we got like the notion of it. Like, never mind how bad soda is for you, but just right. So that's the notion of that. And now today, when you walk into a convenience store, you can get 44 ounces or 64, whatever it is, that is presumably like in a single cup for a person. And that progression, in my mind, is a progression of the business world, in that we're trying to figure out how do we
Duh.
sell, right, more of our
We're
stuff.
selling crap to people. And how do we sell more? And I'm a recovering marketing person.
Oh, tell us about that.
So
Yeah.
I think I can speak here with some authority
Yes.
about selling crap people.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, that's what you do. And we have been the victims for decades now of television and print uh, um, campaigns. I mean, and y'all, this is not new. You know that cigarettes at one time were sold by doctors
That's right.
uh, on television,
Yeah.
saying that the menthol was so refreshing. You know, this
Amazing.
right. And the Philip Morris company is one of the companies that was selling cigarettes then. They're selling cereal now.
Yeah.
It's the same people, the
Right.
same company,
Sure.
and they're selling cereal. Does that bother you? Does that, you know, maybe raise a red flag for
Right.
anybody?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I mean, as a recovering marketing person, as perhaps you recall, like in the 80s, prior to the 80s, you were not allowed to put food claims on packaging. So you could not have heart healthy on Cheerios prior to like 1983 or whatever. And then when they changed those rules, now all of a sudden things that frankly um, not good for you could be marketed in such a way that like there's some health benefit here. And I don't think this is a direct line, but the obesity rate in the country starting in 1980s begins its climb, and we've tripled our obesity rate from 1980 to now. It is surely not a function of a change in the human being's DNA of the country. There has to be an environmental factor that's really driving this. So yeah, I mean, um, maybe you can talk a little more about the alternatives to eating crap, like, well, what do we do? And then maybe some ways in which, I mean, label reading aside, because when I feel like if you're reading labels, you're already one step away from where I would prefer you to be, which that your food shouldn't have labels. We'd like to get whole foods in there.
Well,
And
and you mentioned going into a convenience store. That's it. You just don't.
yeah, yeah, stay out of
What are
there,
you
right,
doing
for
in
sure.
there? Out of there, you know.
Yeah,
So I and we don't have a lot of time, you know,
right, right.
so we compress some of this, but one of the things I talk about a lot is don't be eating out of a bag or a box.
Right,
Um,
right. Bag, box, or can is all trouble.
yeah, and and one of the huge problems we have now is that both mom and dad, uncles, aunts, everybody's working, and
Yes.
Americans particularly are kind of crazy about working
Hmm.
all hours, working long,
Right.
and we have relegated child rearing to some place that you deal with it the best you can, but nobody seems kind of really focused on some of the main
Hmm.
issues involved with raising a child, as far as I'm concerned. And one of them
Hmm.
is food,
Right.
feeding, nourishing a child.
Hmm.
And in fact, and you've met my dog Vigo lying down here.
Yes, very charming.
We are a country that pays, I think, more attention to the nutrition our dog is getting than what our children are eating.
Hmm.
I mean, if I ask anyone on the street, what are you feeding your dog? They'll say, oh, we go with the, this brand of stuff, and it's the raw and it's the frozen and everything. Well, what are you feeding Junior here? Oh, I don't know. He's eating whatever he's
Yeah, yeah,
eating.
yeah, right.
Um, we need to pay attention to what we're all eating, and we also need to pay attention to where that food is coming from, where we're sourcing our food.
Yes.
And if it's in a bag or a box,
Hmm.
you've got issues that you need to deal with right away. Well, who made the bag? Who made the box? Where are they coming from? What are their motivations and so on?
Yeah.
What you need basically is some vegetables that are just vegetables that maybe you raised in a pot or a little garden outside, or you
Yes.
bought from a farmer who raised them,
Hmm.
or you got from a CSA box that got delivered. Real food,
Right.
an actual stock of broccoli.
Right.
Um, and I am not vegan. I have spent more than 1 year of my life being vegan and experimenting with what that did to my numbers and so on, and how to
Right.
do that in a healthy way. And being vegan is a perfectly healthy way to eat if you eat healthy as
Right.
a vegan.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes, you can. Yes, you can eat vegan and be hurting your health in plenty of ways
and
that
be
way as well.
horribly malnourished, because anything that is processed, and this is not original with me, but if it's processed white flour, it's sugar,
Hmm.
basically, and it reacts in your body just like sugar.
So let me
So
ask you a quick, let me interrupt you just one second because there's so much here that we could talk about, but I want to go back to something just about you, in that this is a big thing you're putting your energy into, as your life's work at this particular moment in time. And did you decide to wrestle with helping people deal with the root causes of chronic diseases in an instant? Did you have an epiphany? Or was this something that kind of was incremental, and over time, a variety of observations and experiences moved you into that? What, how did it come
yes,
to you?
it was over time, Peter, and
Hmm.
I was the one who always cooked. As a young woman, my friends always knew that if they showed up at my house, they'd get real food.
Right,
And we were all broke in those days. Nobody had any money. We all drove crappy old cars, and
right.
had lousy jobs, and were poorly paid. So I kind of figured out that my social life was better when I put some beautiful manicotti on the table for people.
Yes,
Um, and someone else would bring the wine, and there you
right.
are.
Yeah.
Good. But over the years, I just became fascinated with the connection between how we ate and how we were, and had kids, and then naturally that becomes more of an interest. And my diabetes was diagnosed when I was in my early 40s, and I was
Hmm.
expecting it because I had gestational diabetes. And I was told
Okay.
then that I would probably become a type 2 diabetic, which in fact I did. Um, and I was just determined that I was going to beat it, that I was not going to, I was the mother of 3 kids.
Right.
They needed me. I was not going to leave them.
Yes.
And so I just began doing research, learning everything I could. And one of the things I figured out early was I would have to cook, continue to cook. I would have to
Yes.
source food, grow food.
Yes.
And put good food on the table. And it wasn't an easy thing to figure out. There were a lot of people saying, no, and the medical community, like, come on, you're diabetic, shut up,
Mm.
was basically their attitude,
Yes,
right?
right,
And,
right.
try and keep your weight down, but, and that was about it. So it was kind of up to me. And I began discovering, actually fairly recently, it was maybe 5, 6 years ago, that the medical community started spinning off some docs who were going, no, wait, the functional medicine movement
Yes,
and
right. Hmm.
the Michael Pollins and so on. And people began to look at medicine in a slightly different way. And I went to a conference, the Plantricians Conference
Okay.
of MDs from all over the world who were sort of mavericks who believed that you could heal with food, but that made them outcasts among MDs,
Right. Yes, yes.
but they were having great success
Yeah, I
with
mean,
their.
it's a return to more ancient common sense wisdom in that let food be thy, medicine, right? And that it's either your safest medicine or your slowest poison. I mean, those ideas,
So
right?
these people were discovering each other, and I discovered them. And the whole time, by now, my kids were having kids,
Right.
and my kids kept saying to me, "Ma, you need to write this stuff down. You need to, you grandmas, that's your job to tell people what you've learned from all these years of battling all this and succeeding with all this." And like you and I were talking earlier, my family were not long lived. My dad
Mm,
died young,
yeah,
69,
right.
and my mom was in her 40s. And
Mm.
so we were all kind of looking at the world going, wait, what happens if you just get really old and you're healthy and you're having fun and it's
Hmm.
cool? What then? What does that look like?
Right.
Um, so I am a writer, basically. That's how I earned my keep for all those years. And
Yeah.
and I wrote this book, Brownies for Breakfast, which is about the fact that if you eat, like I tell you, healthy,
Right.
it looks better, it tastes better, it smells better, your friends will be impressed, everything improves, it's cheaper.
Yes.
People are always saying to me, but isn't it expensive to eat healthy? No, no, it's
Yeah,
not.
right. Yeah, I mean, these are ideas that I'm so delighted to hear you talk about because they're the linchpins of the things that I feel like have that are at the level of societal transformation, right? Because if you have people eating the way you tell them and you are reducing chronic disease, you are reallocating resources within the country away from buying medicine and into buying food. And in my mind, when you talk about, hey, if you're intimidated to grow your own tomatoes, we understand. But there is somebody in your community growing beautiful tomatoes that would love to sell them to you. And that economy is a less expensive economy than the economy of you purchasing medicine from a, manufacturer of,
And more fun. It's more
and
fun,
yes, right, you feel
more
better. You're
sensual, more beautiful,
yes, yes,
all the good things.
yes,
Um, yeah, and you've talked a lot, and you've had guests who've talked about uh, gut health
sure.
and tapping and so
Yeah,
many
yes.
other aspects of making people healthier. We all know it's not news that the American healthcare system is busted.
Yeah,
It's
yes,
broken down. It is not functioning well at all. There are pieces and parts of it that are brilliant, but can we count on getting great health care that we can afford? No,
right.
none of us,
Yes,
at any level,
right.
can count on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, conventional medicine has its place for for certain things. As a naturopathic medicine doctor, my wife would, say, listen, if you have broken your arm, you
Yeah.
don't come to see me. There is all these wonderful things that are going on in the world of medicine that are in fact valuable. And then there are this other portion of healthcare, that in terms of that word in and of itself, right? Like, is it really healthcare or is this sick care? I mean, it's management of people's conditions in a way that doesn't seem to really want to address the condition. It really seems to want to create a business relationship between the patient as a customer and, frankly, the
And
drug
one
companies as,
simple example, Peter, is if you go to a hospital, go to the kitchen, go to the
yes,
cafeteria,
yes,
take a look at what they're serving.
right,
Take a look at the trays of food
yes.
that they bring to the rooms.
Yes, it almost feels as though they're trying to cultivate additional customers, like, hey, we're going to come feed you additional poison, so that way we see you again soon. And that's a harsh disposition. But
Yeah, but
for
what
me,
total disconnect? I
yeah,
mean,
I have to chalk it up to the education that there must be just a profound inattention to the basics of nutrition in the medical education system because it's so absent from the conversation. And I don't know where the lever will come to change the conversation, whether insurance companies will recognize that their product will become so expensive that they will have to have a healthier client base in order to actually have an insurance product, or if doctors will somehow or other find a new way of treating that they can do profitably. I'm not quite sure where it happens because you're creating tension, right? Like your book is about challenging status quo. Is that fair to say? Like what are you challenging out there when you're telling people, hey, it's brownies for breakfast, actually?
absolutely. And it's mainly about having more fun eating,
Yes,
eating better and feeling better as a result.
right.
What's wrong with that? I mean,
Yeah,
hello. And I'm hoping one really exciting thing to me, and again relating to something we were talking about earlier, is that 60% of the people coming out of medical school now are women.
that's
Uh,
interesting.
and when I had my kids, all of the people helping me were men.
Yeah,
And I'm crazy about men. I love men,
right, right.
but I
Yeah,
don't want them in the room when I'm having my babies.
right, right.
I want women
Hmm.
with me. And that goes back how many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years?
Yes, right,
And so I think that the place of women in healthcare and medicine is going to be very interesting to see. But then you mentioned the insurance industry,
right,
which is more important in many ways to our healthcare than our healthcare,
right.
because they're the ones who don't want to pay for it.
Well, and they are the gatekeeper to the protocol, right? They are the
Yeah,
validators that, hey, this
yeah.
is a way to do it or not to do it. So there's an inherent sort, if you, most of us, people don't have the depth of knowledge to be able to feel qualified to challenge an insurance company. When an insurance company says, this is the way we treat it. We treat diabetes with metformin and, insulin and so on and so forth, as opposed to we treat diabetes with vegetables. So when a grandma says, eat the way that I tell you to eat, and I will actually move you from being diabetic to not being diabetic, you're in
By the
conflict.
way, you know that metformin is kind of a designer drug now. Everyone is talking about it as a longevity drug. It has all these other interesting benefits. So, and I want to be clear that I'm not anti-drug or anti-medicine.
Right, right,
There are good meds and there are meds that aren't so good.
right,
And metformin is an old-timey drug, actually. It's been prescribed for decades.
right,
And glucophage, and it can be very helpful in ways that we're just beginning to understand. So, and I take it. I'm a
right,
fan.
right.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but I think like the tension you're creating in my mind is that like a system that says the way in which to address this is that we're going to create a relationship between you and your pharmacist. And I think what you're suggesting is that let's create a relationship between you and your farmer where
Yes.
and that in this different relationship, if you are moving from eating processed foods and things that, drinking all this soda, drink all the crap that you're trying to say, stop eating, and instead attune yourself to this other way of being, there will be benefits. And you know what? You might not even need your pharmacist by the time you've made a transition. And that challenges, I think, the notion of like, well, why. Like, why should I bother to take the effort of cooking? Cooking is something very important to me. So maybe you can talk a little more about that, because my guess is when you say brownies for breakfast, that's a way to entice someone into a conversation where you're not suggesting pour a box full of brownie mix into a pan, and that's how you.
My brownies, they're
All right,
my brownies.
tell me about those.
They're made with nut butter,
Excellent.
pumpkin. So literally a can of pumpkin, a jar of nut butter, some little tiny bit of salt, some baking soda, eggs or egg substitute if you're vegan.
Right.
What else? One of my favorite. Oh, very important. Allulose is a
Allulose. What's that? I don't know what that is.
allulose is a rare sugar. It's a natural sugar that has no calories, gives you no response, blood sugar wise.
Okay.
It tastes great. You think you're eating sugar, except you don't get the aftertaste that you get with sugar. I'm
Okay.
someone who doesn't eat cane sugar
Right.
or maple sugar or coconut sugar or any of those sugars. And so I'm very attuned to when I eat something that has sugar in it, it doesn't taste right to me. I don't actually like the taste that much.
Right.
But allulose is a brilliant sugar substitute. And you hear all the time on health discussions about, well, sugar substitutes, they're just not. Trust me, if you want to quit sugar, and I want you to quit sugar, you need at least a nice transitional drug.
Yes. Right.
And
Yes.
allulose is fabulous.
Okay.
And people like me who you kind of you get away from eating a lot of sweets. Every once in a while, I do want something sweet.
Sure.
And my brownies are fabulous.
Okay.
And so allulose is what I now, and there are others. There's inulin, there's chicory root. There are other good natural sweeteners that don't spike your blood sugar, that are perfectly fine to eat and cook with. But my current fave,
Okay.
and I highly recommend you try it, anyone
Right.
out there who is wanting to do this, allulose, Allulose. You can buy online. I went online looking the other day, just a couple days ago. It used to be there were like 3 kinds. Now there's a million.
Okay.
They're all over the place. People have discovered that this is the way they can get sugar out of their lives. And if you are borderline or trying to lose weight or whatever, one of the first things you really have to do, which most people I think struggle with, it. Well, you really want me to quit sugar? Yes.
Right.
And sugar, if you don't know it, now I'm telling you this, Granny is telling you, sugar is as addictive as heroin.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that in a metaphorical way. It is truly addictive. And when
Yes.
if you quit cold turkey, you'll go through 2 or 3 weeks of withdrawal
Yeah.
from sugar.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's
I mean, having taken people through detoxes of, short-term detoxes, even like 7 days, where, the prescription is a way of eating that eliminates things quickly. So the notion is we're going to suffer over the course of these 7 days because of what you just said. Like when you're eating poorly and then you remove the crap that you're talking about. I think what people don't understand often is that many of these things that are the crap are in fact designer drugs. They're designed as a way for you to consume without being sated. And so the notion of
they
like
are intentionally addictive.
they
The
are
same
intentionally addictive, right?
intentionally addictive, or heroin is intentionally addictive.
Right.
And because people so often say, well, what about if I just cut down? And my answer to that is, well, what if I told you I was just going to cut down on my heroin?
Yeah,
What do
right.
you
Yeah. Just a little
say
bit.
then?
Well, and
Yeah.
I think my experience with taking people through these 7-day detoxes is day 1 through 4 is a miserable experience for them because their body we've taken them cold turkey in that. And then days 5, 6, and 7, they cannot believe how different they feel. And that's part of like what I'm encouraging as people listen to you and the other wonderful people I've talked to, is that I feel that they are too many people in the walking well category, in that they're not sick or sick enough that they're like fed up with how it is, but they don't recognize, they haven't had the experience of how good they could feel if they were properly rested, properly nourished.
And we started this discussion about chronic disease. So
Yes.
let's remind everybody that if you have heart disease or diabetes, unlike me, who found out early relatively in my life, you likely don't know until you've
Yes, right.
really
Yeah.
gone far down the road. And what brings most men to the doctor about this is dysfunction,
Yeah,
erectile
yes,
dysfunction.
right, right.
And, and until then, they're like, nah, I'm good. You know, I am 20 pounds overweight, whatever, but I'm good. Well,
Yes.
no, you're not.
Then become symptoms intolerable.
That's
Yes.
right. And or if it's a heart problem, you know, all of a sudden you've got a little issue and you're faint and you're so on. That's because it's progressed
Yes.
far to the point where it's now really stopping you in your tracks. Don't wait.
Yes.
Don't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, the first symptom of heart issues is often a trip to the morgue, right? I mean, like it's it's fatal. So it will be impossible for people to know how old you are. And so if you're interested in because you're somebody who had an experience of developing diabetes and then you cured yourself. And when you think about the time in between having dealt with it and now, mean, when you compare how you feel in that post-diabetic period, if you compare your energy, your clarity of thought, your overall well-being, how does it compare to other parts of your life? Because some people I feel a little bit despondent, like, well, I'm past the age of really wanting to deal with that, with that they don't think it matters as much. I've heard that from too many people, I will admit.
Oh, it matters more and more and more every year.
Right.
You know, I'm 77. I work out with a trainer 4 days a week and have a great time. That's a social hour for me, and
Yeah.
a lot of girlfriends do it with me here in my little bitty town. I can hike, I can walk, I can go up and down stairs, I can chase a kid, I can grab a dog, I can do all those things that make life rich and fun. Dance,
Right.
you
Yes.
know. And I am pretty sure, had I not been on top of this for decades, I wouldn't be talking this way.
Yeah.
Um, I don't really know what it's like to feel awful.
Right. Right. Right.
And that's the way I want to keep it.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview with Carol Burnett, who is 90, and
Yeah.
she is talking about her next project and what she's going to do. And it's clear within the interview, there's no loss of cognitive step there. She's as sharp as you could want a human being to be. And at this juncture, she's not she's not making choices about what she wants to do based on a constriction of options. She's making choices like, hey, if I want to do this play or work on this movie or whatever, she's just picking it on the merits of the thing rather than saying, well, do I really have the energy to do that? Or, will I be okay if I go try this other different thing? And that keeping your options as a human being to do the things that you want to do up until the moment of death, in my opinion, is a goal. That notion of compression of morbidity, that you want to live and then die, not live and be sick for 20 years
And
and then die.
most people think that's how you die. They think that's how they're going to die.
Yeah.
Suddenly, dramatically, going off a cliff or falling or something.
Right.
And yet we know that that's not how people die. People in this country die long and slow.
Yeah.
And what I'm looking at now, Peter, at this age, there are so many of my friends in their 60s, 70s
Hmm.
who have parents in their 90s and
Yeah.
100 who are requiring constant care
Yes.
and
Yes.
attention and
Yes.
expensive care and attention. And
Yes.
I'm sorry if that sounds tacky, but the truth is living costs money. And so I have all these friends who thought they were going to retire in their 70s and 80s with their
Right.
retirement. And what they're doing is caring for very unhealthy elders.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, having your lifespan and your health span match up as closely as possible, I think is ideal. And I think as you're talking, I mean, the notion is that your health span and your lifespan can be extraordinary in length. Like, Carol Burnett's 90, she doesn't see Charlie Munger just passed at 100, seem to be, capable in his own way. That having the imagination to think I can have all these things available to me, but if you are not cognizant of like what does it take to get there, then chronic disease presents itself. And it's not the horror of a heart attack and oh, you're gone. It's the horror of 25 years of inability to really operate in a world in a way that
we
is
don't
lively.
want to do that to our kids and our grandkids
Yeah,
and our family members, friends. None of us want to do that consciously.
sure.
I don't. But so many of us are doing that.
Well,
So
yeah. I mean, so there are people listening and they're like, well, I got to get that book. Like, where do I get the Brownies for Breakfast book? So, Lynn, like, can you tell us, people want to learn more about what you have to say and what you have to teach? Like, where do they find you?
it's easy.
Okay.
LynneBowman.com. Just spell my name right. It's Lynnne
Okay.
Bowman. And if you Google that, I'll pop up in different places. The book is on Amazon. I'm
Okay.
happy to say it's now out on Audible.
Oh, nice.
And I read it, so I added some stuff and
Excellent.
commented on some stuff. Because of course you always want to update as an author. There are more things that you learn, and so you add things. If you sign up on my website, I send out infrequently. I will send out new recipes, new ideas, and the whole idea is it should be simple.
Yes.
I am not a chef,
Right.
okay? Not a doctor, not
Mm-hmm.
a chef. I'm a grandma. So my stuff is like 3 ingredients, 5 ingredients, stuff you can buy at Trader Joe's or Costco or wherever.
Right.
It's all simple because I want you to do it.
Right. Right.
I want everyone to be able to do one pot.
Yeah.
You don't need fancy equipment. And it's very forgiving. You can
Yeah.
screw it up and it's still good,
Right.
you know.
All
So it's usable, ordinary. But I promise you, yummy. The brownies are great.
All right.
And
Well, I'll be ordering my book shortly here. So, Lynn with a E at the end of it, Lynne Bowman, go find Lynne Bowman, buy her book and sign up for her newsletter, follow her. I think you have an Instagram presence. You have many different ways in which people can follow this
yes,
conversation past this podcast. And I just want to say thank you. I'm so grateful that you spent time with us.
thank you. So fun meeting you. And I look forward to hearing from everybody who's listening today.
That's, that's right. Well, today's modern revolutionary is Lynne Bowman, and she's bringing her ideas to the world. And it's not always easy to bring your ideas to the world. You have to be brave enough to stand up for what you think and bring it out there. And so, not only do I want you to listen and to see how Lynn makes you feel and motivates you, but to also have that be encouragement to bring your ideas and your voice to the world because the modern revolution needs us all.